Overconsumption takes a lot of different forms. It can look like overconsumption of food, overconsumption of social media, overconsumption of things even. And overconsumption of all of these types and more can lead to a whole host of consequences that we may not even realize. This might include wasting our resources, killing already endangered species, and wasting time, just to name a few. I shared in an earlier video the consequences of overconsumption, which you can open in a new tab here if you'd like. But today I'll quickly touch on the definition of overconsumption, as well as 3 tangible ways we can stop overconsumption to promote our health and our wealth. Specifically, I'll focus on digital overconsumption, food overconsumption, and the overconsumption of things. Hi everyone, my name is Carly. On this channel, we talk all things personal finance, modeling, and lifestyle. So if you're interested in any of those topics, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. Overconsumption is defined as the excessive and often unnecessary consumption of goods, services, and resources beyond what is essential for our standard of living. It's often driven by consumerism, materialism, social comparison, and even convenience culture. I think overconsumption can manifest in different aspects of our lives, including excessive buying of things, food overconsumption, and even digital or information overconsumption. When it comes to social media overconsumption, the irony is not lost on me that I am saying this to you as you are consuming this YouTube video, which is a form of social media. Social media companies have done extensive research into how to adjust the algorithms to keep users hooked on their platforms. The more attention they capture, the more monetizable that attention is. And that's because ads are a huge revenue generator for social media companies. I am a regular user of social media, and I have definitely found myself spending more time than I'd like on different platforms. Sometimes it's to the point where my default, when I have any amount of extra time, is to pick up my phone and click into social media apps. This can quickly turn into a rabbit hole of scrolling, and all of a sudden 30 minutes has passed, which is scary because that's a lot of time. There are countless studies that touch on the negative long-term mental and physical health effects that excessive social media use has on our brains and our bodies. If you find yourself in a similar situation as me, here are some ways I have worked on controlling this urge. Recently, I've been trying to put more energy into other areas of my life. I figure if I'm doing something else, then that's time that I'm not on social media. I intentionally spend time creating. So I'll write in my journal, I'll script my videos. I also recently got a paint by number set, so sometimes I'll paint for a few hours before bed. I just figured if I'm creating, then I'm not consuming. I've also been intentionally reading more. I've been trying to limit screen time before bed, but I still want some form of entertainment, so I'll usually read some fiction because it's like watching a movie in my mind. And also, there are no ads in books, usually. I've also started taking walks outside. It's a way to break up my workday and get some activity in between my 9 to 5. I'll also try to go for a walk when I finish work as well. Sometimes I can even catch the sunset, especially as the days are getting longer. And whenever I have to run an errand, I will use that as an excuse to move my body. And my thought process is that if I'm doing these things, I'm not spending time on my phone and on social media, which is then better for my mental health overall. Another way I've tried to cut down on my digital consumption is initiating friend hangouts. I found that when I spend an afternoon with a friend, I'm just flat out not on my phone. I have great conversations and I come away feeling really refreshed. And sometimes if I have a good amount of work I have to do, then I'll just propose a work from a cafe date. Getting things crossed off on my to-do list with someone is so much more motivating than doing it alone. And I think especially since I live alone, I really have to make more of an effort to connect with people. So basically anytime I'm being creative or being social or doing some other non-screen time activity, it's time that I'm not on social media, which is I found better for me. And that's not to say I don't learn from social media. I found that in the last year, I've learned a ton from social media. But I also have to scroll past a lot of useless content before I find the gems that I can really resonate with. Also, when I refrain from social media, I am so much less drained and overall more energized. I also feel less bad about myself because, like it or not, there is that aspect of comparison when you see perfectly curated versions of other people's lives. A lot of the tips I mentioned, like reading a book or hanging out with friends or whatnot, many of us already know exist. But sometimes it takes that extra reminder to make an effort to do something other than scroll social media. Overconsumption of social media, I find, also often leads us to overconsumption of things. Social media is a huge advertising platform, and realistically, we do get influenced. I think one thing that many people don't realize is when people talk about the latest hottest thing on social media, a large percentage of the time, these things are gifted to them. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That's just how the system is. Influencers create content and upload videos, and we consume that as entertainment. So they should get some form of payment for this because this is labor and they are providing value. However, I do think that we as a viewer should be cognizant of the fact that people talking about these life-changing beauty products or saying that something without a doubt will make your life better, or like this is your sign to buy something, they were probably given these products for free, or they were paid to talk about these products, and or they're making money off of every sale they make from their affiliate link. And again, it could very well be that they use these items and it did change their lives and they want to share that joy with us. But just because that thing changed their lives doesn't mean that it will change our lives. It's up to us to use our discernment to decide if we truly need that thing. Will it fill a gap that we currently have? How will having this item actually benefit us? If there's a current gap in your life for any of those items and you would use them and enjoy using them, then buy it and you'll probably support your favorite creator through buying it from their link. But it's important to have a balance between buying things just because someone who didn't even know our personal situation told us it would be good for us, versus thoughtfully taking a look at our lifestyle and figuring out how this new item would actually benefit us and make our lives better. Overconsumption of food might entail overeating, but for this video, I'll touch on food waste specifically. As someone who cooks just about 90% of my meals, food waste is something that I try to be very aware of. I cook for one, me. And because I'm feeding just myself, sometimes the ratios of what I buy for different recipes I try are completely off. For example, I might be left with a huge bundle of parsley or a whole extra chunk of celery for a recipe that called only for like one stock. In those cases, I try to use multiple recipes that incorporate the same ingredients so that I can make sure that I'm using all of the items in my fridge. I realize that for some fruits or vegetables, if washed and stored properly, they will last sometimes 50% longer than if I just wrapped it in a plastic bag and stuck it on a fridge shelf. And one example of this is berries. Anytime I buy berries, I immediately wash them and store them in a glass container. And not only does this make it easier for me to pull out and just eat as a snack, they're already prepped, so I don't have to wash a portion each time I want to eat a portion of berries. Asparagus and celery, for example, if you store upright and in a container of water, or more realistically for me, in a plastic bag with water, they last so much longer than if you wrap them in a plastic bag and put them horizontally on a shelf. There are so many handy tips on Google on how to make different vegetables last longer. So if you find that a certain fruit or vegetable goes bad before you can consume it, I would look on Google and see if there's a better way for you to store it. As I mentioned before, I think glass containers are a great option for this. And you don't have to specifically buy them. A lot of glass containers I repurpose from old pasta sauce containers. Freezing food is a great option as well, and this is something that I learned more recently. If I see something in the fridge that I know I won't be able to finish before it goes bad, I'll fully stick it in the freezer, or maybe I'll do some prep, like chop it up, before sticking it in the freezer. And this is usually the case, especially if the texture in how I prepare it later doesn't really matter. One example of this for me is spinach. I don't know what is in the bags of spinach I buy, but they always seem to go bad within like 2 to 3 days after I open them. And immediately as soon as I notice that they are losing their freshness, I will stick the whole bag in the freezer and I'll just add it to my smoothies. I also make soups quite often, so if I have extra like onions or celery or carrots that are about to go bad, then I'll just chop them up, stick them in the freezer, and I've bought myself an extra 2 to 3 months before I have to use them again. The average US household throws away around $1,000 worth of food waste per year. The more we cut down on overconsumption of food, not only do we save money, we also save the environment. I think a huge factor in making sure that we cut down on this food waste is making sure that we know how to store our produce. Cutting down on overconsumption of social media, overconsumption of things, and overconsumption of food can not only promote healthier habits, but it'll also save us money while doing so. We can take intentional actions to not be on social media, and the less social media that we consume, the less we get influenced by things that we simply do not need. We can also make sure that we're fully consuming everything we buy by storing our produce right and freezing what we don't use. If you like this video, you should also watch this video on 8 habits to practice for an easy life.